Welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to talk about something that everyone listening has felt, usually this week, probably even today: stress. We talk about it all the time. I'm stressed, work is so stressful, this week has been stressful. But underneath that familiar word are some very powerful processes in the brain and body that can either help us function at our best or slowly wear us down. Our topic today is the psychology of everyday stress. Why modern life keeps us on edge, what stress really does to the mind and body, and how we can stop treating stress as a personal failure and start working with it more wisely. I'm joined as always by Professor Raveen Hanwella, Emeritus Professor of Psychiatry and practicing clinician for over 3 decades. Thank you for being here, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Radhika. I'm glad we are talking about stress because it is something that touches almost every conversation we have in mental health. Yet many people still misunderstand it. They kind of either dismiss it or feel guilty for not handling it better. Uh,
Let's start with the basics. When people say I'm stressed, they usually mean I feel under pressure or I feel overwhelmed. How do you define stress from a psychological and biological point of view?
yeah, in simple terms, stress is the body and brain's response to a perceived demand or threat. It could be a real danger, like, for example, a car suddenly swerving in front of you, or something more abstract, like an exam, a deadline, a difficult conversation, or financial worries. When the brain detects something it interprets as a challenge or danger, it activates what we call the stress response. Now, this is not just a mood, it's a full body adjustment. So there are hormone changes, the heart rate increases, muscle tense, attention narrows. So the organism actually is getting ready to take action. Now, the most important point is that this system evolved to protect us. So stress is not automatically bad. Without it, you won't get out of bed, you won't study for exam, move out of the way of that oncoming car. The problem arises when the system is switched on too often, for too long, or with too little time for recovery.
So, stress is meant to be like an alarm that goes off briefly and then switches off once the danger or challenge passes.
Yeah, exactly. The original design is something happens, the alarm rings, you respond, and then you return to a calmer baseline. But modern life, however, is full of little alarms, that never quite stop ringing.
Can you walk us through what happens in the brain and body when someone feels stressed?
Yeah, when the brain perceives a threat or demand, one of the first structures to be involved is what we call the amygdala, and that's the brain's early warning detector. It sends signals to another part of the brain called the hypothalamus, which then activates two main pathways. The first is what we call the fast pathway, that's our sympathetic nervous system, and that triggers the release of chemical called adrenaline. And within seconds, your heart rate goes up, blood pressure increases, breathing becomes quicker, and sugar is released into the bloodstream to give you quick energy. Now, this is what we call the classic fight or flight response. The second is slower, but it's longer lasting, and that's called the HPA axis, which stands for hypothalamus pituitary adrenal glands. And that leads to the release of another substance called cortisol, a stress hormone that helps maintain alertness and mobilize energy over a longer period of time. Now, this system is incredibly useful if you are facing a short term threat, but when the demands never stop, constantly checking emails, dealing with conflicts, worrying about money, caring for sick people, the body can stay in a half activated state for days, months, or years. And over time, that continuous wear and tear is what we call chronic stress.
So when someone says, I feel constantly on edge, that's not imaginary. Their nervous system is literally sitting closer to fight or flight all the time.
Yes, and it often shows up in the body before the mind labels it. For example, tight shoulders, clenched jaw, headache, stomach discomfort. Sometimes the body notices stress before we consciously do.
You mentioned that stress isn't always bad. Can you talk about the difference between helpful and harmful stress?
There's a concept called eustress, that is positive stress. This is the kind of stress you feel before a performance, an exam, or a game. You're alert, energized, keyed up, and it helps you to focus and perform. And then there is a distress when demand feels too high, too constant, or too uncertain, and that's when stress starts to feel exhausting and frightening rather than energizing. So people sometimes dream of a life with zero stress. Interestingly, that wouldn't be a healthy life either. We need some challenges to grow, to feel engaged, to have meaning. The goal isn't to eliminate stress entirely, but to keep it within a range the system can recover from.
So the question isn't how do I get rid of all stress, but how do I stop living in a state of constant distress?
Yeah, exactly. And that involves both changing external conditions where possible and changing how we respond internally.
Let's talk about modern life because sometimes it feels like we're living in a stress factory. What are some features of contemporary life that keep the stress response activated?
Yeah, a few stand out. First, the constant connectivity. Now, smartphones mean that many of us never truly leave work. Emails, messages, notifications follow us into the bedroom, the car, the bus, and even into meals, maybe even the toilet. The brain doesn't get a clear signal that work time is over and the rest time has begun. And second, multitasking and information overload. We are asking the brain to process more information in a day than people used to encounter in weeks. Switching rapidly between tasks is tiring for the attention system. And thirdly, there's uncertainty and comparison. People face precarious jobs, changing economies, and social media feeds that constantly show other people's highlight reels. Now, that combination, unstable ground beneath your feet and constant comparison, is very stressful. And fourthly, loss of recovery rituals. Now, in the previous generation, there were clear transitions. End of the workday, fixed meal times. People sat together at tables, which hardly happens now. Communal gatherings, religious or cultural rituals that slowed things down. So, temple on poor days, Sundays, church, whatever. Many of these structures have now thinned out. Uh, yeah, and so we
When
end up in a Yeah, so we end up in a strange situation. Our stress response was designed for short bursts of physical danger, but we are used to respond to a never-ending stream of emails and worries and expectations.
stress becomes chronic, how does it typically show up in a person's life?
It shows up everywhere. In the body, you might see muscle tension, headaches, stomach or bowel problems, chest tightness, fatigue, sleep difficulties. Some people feel wired but tired, exhausted but unable to switch off. And in the mind, there's often racing thoughts, worry, difficulty in concentrating, and a sense that the brain is full of static. Small problems feel larger because there's no extra capacity to deal with them. And emotionally, people feel irritable, easily tearful, or numb. And they describe having a short fuse or reacting out of proportion to small triggers. Uh, and in behavior, we see changes in habits. People reach out for more caffeine, cigarettes, alcohol, comfort food. They withdraw from friends because they don't have the energy, or become more snappy with those closest to them. What's important to understand that these changes are not moral failures. They are the ways an overloaded system is trying to cope.
At what point do you, as a psychiatrist, start to worry that stress has crossed the line from normal pressure into something more dangerous?
Yeah, we worry when stress is no longer a passing state but becomes a near permanent condition that significantly interferes with the functioning and well being. So, some warning signs are persistent insomnia or very disrupted sleep for weeks, constant sense of dread, frequent panic attacks, significant weight loss or gain because of stress related eating, marked increase in alcohol or substance use to switch off, and especially thoughts like I can't go on or everyone would be better off without me. Another red flag is when stress starts causing serious performance problems, not just a few off days, but a sustained decline in work or study, increased mistakes, or repeated conflicts in relationships. So at that point, we aren't talking about simple stress anymore. It may be, or it may have evolved into an anxiety disorder, depression, or burnout. And that's when professional support becomes very important.
Let's move towards solutions. Many people listening will feel, yes, I'm stressed, but they can't just quit their job or magically fix their life circumstances. How can we change our relationship with stress even when the external pressures remain?
Yeah, that's a very realistic question. Now for most people, the answer isn't running away from everything. Instead, there are three broad directions: changing what you can in your environment, changing how you respond in your body, and changing the stories you tell yourself about stress. So, for example, changing the environment might mean setting clear boundaries around work time and rest time, renegotiating impossible workloads, saying no to commitments. Or it might be as simple as not checking email after a certain hour, or as big as changing your job. But of course, not everyone has that freedom, but often there is more room for adjustment than we might initially assume. Then changing the body's response involves practices that can calm the nervous system. For example, slow breathing, stretching, walking, taking short pauses during the day. Now, these might sound small, but if done consistently, they send repeated messages to the stress system that it is safe to turn the volume down. Now, changing the internal story is about how we interpret stress. Instead of saying, I must cope perfectly with everything, we might move towards I'm doing my best in a difficult situation and it is okay to struggle. So, reducing what we call self criticism itself reduces a layer of stress.
Could we get a bit more concrete? If someone listening wants to start making changes this week, what are some practical, simple things they could try?
Yeah, so one simple step is to introduce what I call micro pauses into the day. So every couple of hours, take 60 seconds to stop, feel your feet on the ground, take three slow breaths, in through the nose, out through the mouth. And while you do that, you can suddenly say to yourself, right now in this moment, I am safe. Now it sounds almost too simple, but these small pauses, repeated many times, help prevent the stress system from staying at the maximum volume all day. Uh, well, another step is to protect sleep as much as our life circumstances allow. That might mean limiting screen for at least half an hour before bed, having a small wind down ritual, for example, a shower, reading, gentle stretching, and of course, keeping your phone away from the pillow. Better sleep doesn't remove stress, but it significantly improves your capacity to cope with stress. Third step, maybe to write down your stressors. Take a piece of paper, divide it into two columns. Things I can influence, things I can't control. and then place each major stressor into one column. For the can influence side, you can choose one small action you can take about that stress for this week. For the can't control side, your task is different. That's to practice letting go of focusing on how you respond rather than trying to bend, reality to your will. And finally, talk to someone. Stress shrinks when it is shared with a trustworthy person. A trouble shared is a trouble halved, like they say. You don't have to have a perfect solution before you talk. Simply saying, I'm overwhelmed, can also be a relief.
Some people seem more prone to stress than others. How much of this is personality and how much is the culture we live in?
Yeah, both play a role. Personality-wise, individuals who are highly conscientious, perfectionists, sensitive to criticism, are the most vulnerable to stress because they place immense pressure on themselves. Their internal voice is harsher than any boss. On the cultural side, of course, you grow up in a society or family that equates worth with productivity. You will naturally feel more stressed when you're not constantly achieving. And then some cultures also discourage expressing distress, so people feel they have to cope silently, which increases stress. It's important to recognize that these influences not to blame them, but to get perspective. Once you see that your stress is partly shaped by personality and culture, you can choose how much you want to let those forces dictate your life.
So we've spoken about self-management. When is it time to say, this is bigger than me, I need professional help?
Yeah, if stress has been intense and persistent for weeks or months and it is clearly affecting your sleep, relationships, work, or physical health, that's a strong sign. Then, if you notice symptoms of what we call panic, sudden intense fear, racing heart, breathlessness, feeling that you might die or go crazy, then it is important to get assessed. Also, if stress is accompanied by persistent low mood, loss of interest in the things you used to enjoy, or thoughts of self harm, then we may be moving into a depressive or anxiety disorder, which definitely warrants professional attention. Also, if our main coping mechanisms have become alcohol or drugs or other compulsive behaviors, that's another reason to seek help. There's no price for enduring alone until you collapse. A few sessions with a mental health professional can sometimes shift things more than months of struggling on your own.
As we come to the end of this episode, what final message would you like to give to someone listening who's thinking, yes, that's me, I'm constantly stressed and I feel like I'm a failure at life?
Yeah, I'll say this. The fact that you feel stressed doesn't mean that you are failing. It usually means that you are human, but trying to carry more than one person reasonably can. Perhaps without enough support, rest, or kindness from yourself. So, stress is not a moral verdict, it's a feedback from your mind and body saying something about the way I'm living or thinking is not sustainable. I need adjustment, not punishment. So, if you can shift from why I'm so weak to what is my stress trying to tell me, you have already taken a step towards wisdom. Then gently you can begin to adjust expectations, introduce small pauses, ask for help, and perhaps make bigger changes when the time is right. Now, you don't have to turn your life upside down overnight. You can start with one kind of decision towards yourself today and another one tomorrow.
Thank you, Prof. Raveen. That's a very humane way to think about stress, not as a personal defect, but as a signal that we need to listen to, not ignore. And thank you to everyone who listened in. If this conversation resonated with you, you're not alone. Maybe send this episode to someone who always says, I'm fine, but looks permanently exhausted. As always, this podcast is for education and reflection. It doesn't replace individual medical care. If your stress feels unmanageable, if you're struggling with panic, low mood, or thoughts of harming yourself, please seek professional support. Until next time, take care of your mind, your body, and the small spaces of rest in your day.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Radhika.